All right, everybody online and everybody here in person, welcome to our March meeting of the Southern Fried DNN user group. We are coming to you from historic downtown Mooresville, from the home of David Poindexter and Envisionative. We had to move our session this week, or this month to this week, because there was a scheduling conflict with the location of Microsoft where we normally are. And that's an opportunity for us to come out to visit some of our crew and some of the community in other locations. And David offered to host us. And this is a gorgeous, gorgeous location. I put out a tweet earlier of the storefront in Mooresville downtown, so everyone can see what it looks like. And I'll post a shot in the recap. But it's quite an artistic space that we got here. We could easily have another 20 people in the room, and we'd have a great party going on. So for tonight, we've got a pretty good roster. Quick teaser for Tony that's going to be coming on in a few minutes. I'll let David do a more proper introduction and intro for Tony, but Tony Carter is someone from the community that everyone should know. If you've been to any DNN events, Tony sticks out and is greeted, friendly with everyone, and a big smiling face that everyone recognizes instantly. He's president and CEO of Carter Solutions. They're in Florida, and although I'm sure there's some other development shops we've heard of in Florida, Carter Solutions is the main one I think of when I'm heading down that way. So we're going to have Tony coming on in just a little bit to talk about some exciting ideas of combinations with DNN and something that I'm very little familiar with, JSON Web Tokens. So looking forward to hearing about that and how we can power mobile and single-page application-based data and updates from your DNN website. So that's going to be an exciting session coming up. Shout out to our sponsors for this session. We've got logos up, and we'll make sure to put links into our recaps. But Xamarin was one of the things that we're going to be talking about as a sponsor for today. We've got a couple of other things that we'll do at the end of the session for, do we have giveaways today? We do have good. All right, we got a few giveaways. We'll get down to those. But then we've had, yes? And I want to announce that one of the special giveaways, we're going to extend it to the online community. Wonderful, wonderful. We've been talking about how to do that, so that's excellent. So a lot of stuff going on in the community. I'll jump right into some announcements and some things that are around. Burrito Loco. Let me switch over to another shot here. Burrito Loco. Located in downtown Mooresville here, wonderful little restaurant. And they're associated also with the Prickly Pear and Pear Day in Huntersville, which is an absolutely phenomenal Latin fusion type place. And they're a client of ours, and they've been so gracious to sponsor our meeting, and hopefully we can get them to go see some stuff in the future. All right, that is exciting. And also JetBrains. Yes, JetBrains and Infragistics. All right, so community announcements. A lot of exciting things have gone on since our last meeting. Probably one of the most exciting for a wide range of people in the community is the announcement of the winners for the DNN module contest. I won't go into depth about that, but in the community hangout that Will hosted just the other day, he did a good run through of the module contest winners, and I'd encourage folks to not only go back to and watch and pick up some of those information, but also to take a look at the hangout page, which I'll link in my description off of SoFri, to really get a quick link to all of the different winners from the contest modules. So we have all kinds of things from folks that we'd expect, like Peter Donker. We'll put things in there as well, but we've got things from a wide range of from developers new and old, and it's an exciting mix of things that you'd expect, things you weren't even thinking of, and it's pretty exciting. I was glad to see a variety in the turnout of what was there, and also in the picking of who won. So it was a good, successful contest. That's good. Yeah. Innovative ideas. Right. All right. So while we certainly have DNN Connect that people are excited about and talking about. I'll talk a little bit more about that at one of our next meetings. But we have shorter deadline coming up to us here, DNN Con. So it's a good time to spend a moment talking about some updates for DNN Con and checking with everybody for their plans to attend and timelines. Some of the updates that might not have been in place quite by the last time that we were in a meeting. They have posted the sessions that are going to be at the DNN Con, so you can go in and find out not only who's going to be presenting, but a good overview synopsis of what they're going to be presenting on. And they don't yet have it in a format so that you can see, you know, session 1, session 2, session 3, so that you can start picking out who's going to be the winner and your begrudging loser of who you're going to go and sit and attend and watch. That's always the hardest. That's always the hardest thing for me is when I'm at a DNN event, picking one session to go to is easy, but then looking at the ones that you're not sitting in on because you're in on the one is crushing. So you want to talk to everybody about what they saw that you didn't get to see when you're there. There are a lot of things going on with Twitter right now for and encouragement for not only a quiz and question things going on for DNN Con, but they've challenged folks to put out a blog post. And if you can put out a blog post for the top 3 reasons that you can't miss DNN Con, then they will give you an extra raffle ticket when you're there. So it's a selfish reason for you to promote and get involved and get that extra raffle ticket, because I'll tell you, I'm going to get my extra raffle ticket. You better get yours. So go out there, blog and promote. Talk about your past experiences at DNN events. Talk about what you're looking forward to. Talk about the people that you haven't seen in a while that you want to get connected with again. If you look back through some of my blog posts, community and networking, not from a business perspective, but from a camaraderie perspective, is the main thing that I just am thrilled with at any DNN event that I go to. So you'll see a bit about that in my blog posts regarding it. But I encourage everybody to go out there and do that as well. Help promote, and certainly if you haven't already made plans for hotel, for travel, or those things, you got to get on it. You don't have that many more days left. Get a move on. Any other things for DNN Con, David, to suggest? We'll have to rib Will, maybe we can get some insight, or you really know when you're being modest? Okay. Well, so that's DNN Con updates. Let me come back to the DNN Hangout, because we will come back to it, I promise, in another SoFri event. But Will was helping host and present the Hangout here. That was, how many days ago was that? Was it only yesterday? I thought it was the beginning of the week. So it was only yesterday, and we had some losers in the community finally step up and actually do something worthwhile. And it's one of those things where you just know it's going to happen one day, and then eventually they get around to it. No. David Poindexter with Envisionative was featured because he surprised everybody. Hadn't really been talking much publicly about some of these ideas, but he was driven by a longing for an old way of quickly installing and setting up, propping up DNN instances that he used to love. And when that stopped being supported and needed updates and modernization, he pitched in, stepped into that hole, and created a new system. So the Hangout video is worth watching, if nothing else, for that introduction. There are links through this information, the information in the post about it. But the solution is NV QuickSight, and this is all. I was going to say this is the brainchild. Maybe it was inspired by what came before it, but this is the blood, sweat, and tears of David Poindexter, and it's something that if you prop up 1 or 2 DNN instances every once in a while for development testing, or you are propping up sites all the time for hosting and clients, this is an invaluable tool to quickly and easily prop up new DNN instances. And we will feature this and have David do an introduction and video in a later SoFri session so that we can really go through it. But props and congratulations to David for putting this together, and spent a few minutes in that video seeing how proud David is of it. But I mean, he should be proud, but also how everybody is really excited about it, and thanking David for putting into the community for something like this. So that leads me into talking about community and putting into the community. I should have pulled this one up before. I tell you what, I'm just going to hold still, come back maybe to our screen here, but please. Yeah.
Before you shift off that, you kind of triggered something. You know, we did reveal in a quick slide yesterday, but the main reason for that hangout was to talk about the community.
Yes.
So, you know, the history and kind of where we've been, how can you get involved now? You know, so do check out that hangout and watch that piece of it, because maybe you've been dormant for a while, or maybe you've been really active, but you've seen maybe a decline a little bit in the community. It's a great time to be a DNNer. Mm-hmm. So do check out that hangout. You can maybe connect some dots in ways that you could be involved and participate that you may not have realized before. So.
That's a good segue. At the last DNN Con in Palm Beach, I gave an Ignite session on how to get involved and how to enjoy doing what you do in business. And there were some business tips, but it really, about halfway through that Ignite session, went into community, getting involved in your community, but also getting involved within the DNN community and how to participate and what benefits that can bring. I'm going to go ahead and advertise for an easy to participate opportunity for everybody who's watching this later, everybody who's online now, everybody who's with us. At one of the last meetings, we had a short introduction from Joe Brinkman for the new DNN Documentation Center. Documentation and information for DNN has had several different lifespans or lifetimes in different methods of delivery, and this new documentation center is an interesting one. One of the benefits of what's available here is that it is all inside of GitHub, where we can do polls for it and we can participate. It's no longer a closed door. We can participate as the community and help make that better, help put more information in place. If you are a DNN administrator and you've thought that everything was too developer heavy, or vice versa, you're a developer and you've thought that everything was all administrator heavy, and you want to have an editor's set of information about how to do things in DNN, or you constantly are training clients on how to use the WYSIWYG editor, and there's this one point that you'd love to point out and have that be in the help documentation, this is your chance. So I believe in the May session of SoFri, and I'll double check the dates and everything here towards the end, but in the May session, we will have a two-parter of a session. We will begin by having Joe give a more in-depth presentation of what it is structured like now, his hopes for it in the future. We may talk a little bit of history about some of the help things that have been there in the past. And Joe's going to give us a good foundation in what we see. The last half of that session is going to be David running through as a GitHub introduction or reintroduction, because we've done it a few different times. But the point of that is going to be to actively make some changes, make some submissions, make some updates to the DNN Documentation Center. It's going to be a working meeting. I'm sure we're going to click on buttons wrong. I'm sure we're going to do something twice in one section. It's going to be a non-edited, us playing around and taking your suggestions, gathering them together and working on them to get them into the Documentation Center that night. So at this meeting and at our next meeting, I'm going to be putting out and then reminding everyone about this call and request for content. Many of you can reach out to myself or to David. We have our info at southernfrieddnn.com email address. We will take we will take information in any format that you want to get it to us. Try and give us some information about a categorization, about what the information should be about, what section it goes into. If you're able to go into the DNN Documentation Center to find sections that are lacking or are missing that special thing that you want to add in, that's what we're appealing to the community to get into right now. because we're going to have basically 2 months to get those things together, David and I to organize them, and then in our May session, we're going to be putting them in place. David, do you have any other points about that? Otherwise,
we're excited about it.
Good introduction.
We haven't had a working meeting
In a little while, yeah. And if you're just there to watch and remind yourself or learn a little bit more about how to participate in things in general in GitHub, it's perfectly applicable. So multiple reasons to participate, both in that meeting, but also in the community and with information. At that point, unless there are any other announcements that I've missed or went through too quickly, I think it's time for me to turn things over to David for a moment for intros for Tony.
Is everybody here going to
Back up on DNN Con. Folks online, everybody's already got tickets, already flying or driving, got a hotel? You guys all set up?
Tony is presenting.
Right.
Daryl will not be able to join.
It's a little far. It's a little far. Tell you what, when we have SoFri and we do ours here in North Carolina again, we'll work out special accommodations just for you, and free hotel, room and board. We'll work up something. You just got to get here.
Wow, that's a pretty serious offer there.
Yeah. Either crickets, he didn't hear us, or he's like, yeah, no, not these guys.
He actually fell asleep.
Yeah, seriously. It is late for him. All right, well, let's switch gears just a little bit. We're getting ready to switch screens and share screen and have Tony come in and get started with his information and presentation. I'm going to let David give a brief introduction. David knows Tony well and can speak a little bit more about not only his background, but possibly a little bit about the technology we're getting into here, where I'm certainly familiar with JSON. I'm certainly familiar with consuming data and formatting and organizing, but web tokens, brand new. I'm going to look forward to this.
Well, we are honored and excited to have Tony Carter with us tonight from Carter Solutions. Known Tony for several years now and have worked with Tony. And when you talk about people in the DNN space that are good go-to people, Tony and his company is a good go-to company. If you need development work, be it DNN or otherwise, you just need some hardcore programming done. These guys know and gals know exactly what they're doing. I can't, Tony can vouch for this. Sometimes I'm calling up Tony, hey man, I've got this stupid little problem, and I can't, how should I do this? He's like, oh yeah, just pull up SQL Profiler and watch it go through. He just told me this the other day, right, Tony? And by the way, your tips led to a 5-minute session in SQL Profiler and immediately finding out what my problem was in code. So thank you very much for that tip. But that, that's the kind of thing that that you get with Tony. Not only that, he's about as good as they come as far as integrity and loyalty and those type of things. So we couldn't be more excited to have Tony with us tonight, and he is going to be talking about something very cool and something very new to the DNN world. He's going to be talking about JSON Web Tokens, and in DNN 8 there is JWT support, and Tony's going to be talking a little bit about that and what that really means and how you would leverage that to be able to access data inside DNN from outside of DNN. So without further ado, Tony, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, Tony Carter.
All right.
Hey guys.
Round of applause. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
all right, let's go see if we can get my screen. Which screen are you guys seeing?
We are seeing
See the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So, first of all, Ryan and David, thank you guys very much for that intro. I don't know if I can live up to that, but I tell you what, I'm really happy to hear somebody say that about me. So,
Good people, man. Good people.
no, honestly. But the first thing I want to do is I want to give a plug for DNN Con because I know that that Columbia, Maryland is a beautiful place, and it's a beautiful place at that time of year. And if you can make it over there, you definitely want to try to make it over there. I really think it's going to be a great event. I think it's going to be a lot of information, and I'm really excited about the release of DNN 8 and that the .NET Nuke Corporation is really pushing their marketing. They're really back into it, and so I'm really happy to see that from my standpoint, because I hung my hat on DNN years ago, and so far it hasn't let me down. So I want to say that. So tonight what I want to cover is JWT and DNN 8. And the reason why it's kind of significant, because when we build solutions, for the most part, we build the right solution. We use the right tool for the right problem, for the problem, and that's how we work. And a lot of things in DNN are fantastic for web content management. They're fantastic for a lot of things, but one of the things that has been kind of not easily accessible is how to connect external systems to your DNN instance without jumping through hoops. And I think that this is really one of those things that kind of closes the loop on that. And I'll be giving a presentation, two presentations out at DNN Con. One of them is more in-depth into the JWT and DNN 8, and another one is how we can build mobile apps using Xamarin that was recently acquired by Microsoft to connect to your .NET Nuke, so you can add that mobile element to your toolbox. So I'll just continue through my presentation, but I am the president, as they said, the president and CEO of Carter Solutions. I am a systems and software engineer active over the last 20 years, and I've done a lot of work for public and private companies, including Disney and EarthLink and blah, blah, blah. And I guess the biggest thing I could say about me is that I'm really passionate about solving problems. I like to find practical solutions to problems, and again, I like to use the right tool for the problem at hand. So with that, I'll continue. Now, I don't know what you guys know about JSON Web Tokens, but JSON Web Tokens essentially is an authentication protocol. And what that means is that we're all familiar with OAuth, right? Well, OAuth is an authentication framework. So it is a mechanism by which you can authenticate and continue to pass these claims back and forth from one system to the next, where JWT is actually a protocol such as like HTTP is over Ethernet. And the reason that's really important to understand is because it's an open protocol, it's an open standard protocol, it's compact. And the reason it's compact is because it's using JSON, it's not using XML, it's not using, different types of really heavy message, I want to say message envelopes for the most part. It's self-contained. So self-contained means that essentially when you're authenticating to a particular server, you don't have to go back and forth about what it is that you have the ability to do. It's actually contained in the token itself. So basically when that token gets passed in, it passes in all the information it needs to process. The other thing is that there is an option where you can actually sign your token, and when you sign it, you have a hash, and you use that hash, and that hash signs it. And then, but the reason that's important is because DNN 8, as far as I can see, doesn't use signing for their tokens. Okay, so there's subtle differences between the DNN 8's implementation of the JWT and other ones. So hold on, I'm going to see if I can mute I get an echo in my ear. So I'm going to see if I can mute my headset. All right, much better. Can you guys hear me?
We'll mute you while you're doing this. We'll mute us, sorry, while you're doing that.
Say it again.
If anyone else
okay,
online, if everybody wouldn't mind just muting during the presentation unless you do have a question.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks a lot. All right, so as I was saying, DNN 8 has a slightly different implementation of the JWT as far as assigning goes. And I haven't seen that it's actually a signed token, so there's no need to understand what that is. But as I move forward, I'll kind of just walk you through how the process of the token actually occurs, and then it might kind of give you a little bit more idea as to how things work in DNN 8. So where it starts is that the browser or the client actually initiates the communication. It logs in to an authentication server. And as you see here in this diagram, there's actually three lanes. There's the browser and the client, there's the authentication server, and there's the resource server. And a lot of times you'll see the authentication and the resource server are actually the same computer, or they expose the same services, right? And when you go online and if you look at different diagrams, a lot of times they kind of leave out the part that the resource server doesn't necessarily have to be the same box as the authentication server, the same site. So once the browser, the client logs in, what happens is that the authentication server returns to the browser or client a JWT or a JSON Web Token. Once that web token is received back at the client, then that token can be used to accommodate any number of requests through the authorization header of a web request. And so from that point, it sends the JWT to the resource server, which would be an API in our case, and then that API reads that token and it says, oh, okay, this is a valid user, it's validated, the token is valid, and what are some of the claims that can be added to that token from the authentication server. The other thing that you'll find is that there's typically a refresh token with the JWT, and the reason that you have a refresh token is that when your initial token is created, it's created with a lifespan. Now, if I want to authenticate and I want that authentication to last for the next 6 years, I can do that, which is okay. But the problem you have is that if that person changes a role, if permissions changed, if anything changes that need to be updated, then the only way you can do that is by making sure that you have a mechanism by which you can actually reissue a token. And that's really the purpose of the refresh tokens. So you have one token that has a longer lifespan, but you have a refresh token that you use, and that refresh token has a shorter lifespan, which allows you to keep having to go back, and you don't have to re-authenticate, but you have to go back again and get an updated token. That updated token at that point can contain different information. So I've added a role. Now I'm the administrator role as well as the user role. Well, now when that new token comes back to me, it has that information embedded in it. Okay? And then you guys let me know if you have any questions throughout this process. Right? It took me a little bit to kind of wrap my head around this whole thing initially because I was kind of used to the, let the framework handle it for me type of thing. But we've had to go and actually implement JWT inside of some ASP.NET websites, and it doesn't support it kind of like out of the box. So it took some while and some research to go in and really understand how these things work under the hood. So this is how the overall process works. And just so you know, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to walk you through this. I'm going to show you how to set it up in DNN 8, and then what I'm going to do is give you a demo on the whole thing. I think that once you see the demo, I think it'll make much more sense. You can relate it back to what you're used to doing inside of DNN, and I think for a lot of you, the light bulb's going to be like, oh yeah, I get it, absolutely. So with that, again, DNN 8's role, as far as that process that we talked about, is actually the authentication piece. So it is the issuing token component, the authentication server, but yet it is also the resource server. So that means that you will log in to DNN 8 and get your token, but then you pass that token back to your web services that are in the services framework inside of DNN 8. Okay, so how do we enable JWT inside of DNN8? Well, the first thing we have to do is we've got to add the security provider, and then we've got to go in and we've got to update the web config. To add the security provider, for most of you, you've installed modules, you've gone in here and installed extensions, all this other stuff. Well, it's under the available extensions, it's not installed, and it's underneath the provider section, and it's just called DNN JWT auth handler. Once you install the auth handler, then it shows up in your installed extensions. Then you go down to the web config, and there's a couple of things over here. You'll now have under message handlers, you'll have a little element down here called JWT auth. And then what you have to do is come down here, especially if you're in development, you come down here, you say default include true. By default it's false, and then force SSL to false. Because most of you, I'm sure, don't have SSL installed on your dev box for every DNN site that you're spinning up and that you're working on. And that's really it. I mean, that's all there is to really enabling JWT inside. So with that, what I'll do is I'll switch over to my screen, my other screen, and you guys let me know if you see my second screen.
Yep, we see it. We're good.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. First thing, obviously, you want to have DNN 8. You can go out to Codeplex and download the community version if you want. And
Or you could install NV QuickSight and spin it up in a matter of
that is
seconds.
absolutely. Hey, I took notes. I took notes, David. I'm totally gonna download that for sure.
So Tony, how long did you, while we're waiting for that to spin up, how long did it take you really kind of figure out that web config needed to be updated for some of that stuff? Are those elements already there, or do they have to be added as far as forcing SSL and including?
When you install the provider, it adds the element to the web config, but it leaves it in almost like a production configuration. So you've just got to go in and, so like for example, if I'm here, let's see, it's not installed. If I come down here to under message handlers, you see right here under auth services, it's not there. It doesn't exist. So once I come down to host extensions, available extensions, providers, and then I install the JWT component. Now that that's installed, I come down, now I have JWT in my web config.
Excellent. So its default configuration is for a secure production environment. That's the approach, I guess, right?
Absolutely. Yep. We'll let this guy recompile and do all the wonderful things that ASP.NET websites do when you change their configs and their files.
We're waiting for it to come back up.
Go ahead now.
Tony, while we're waiting for it to come back up, I was going to ask, you know, you said it took you a while to work through some of these things. As a brief introduction, what was the problem that you were trying to solve and that led you to know that JWT was going to be a good solution that was worth all that research and worth all that working out?
Well, it really came down to the need to handle authentication in another application. So we were developing another application, and we were trying to figure out what was the best way to handle the authentication piece, because it wasn't like a DNN site, it wasn't a regular ASP.NET MVC website. It was kind of a disconnected integration between 2 or 3 different parties, and the authentication piece fell back on us. And at that time, it was understood, okay, well, if we did this, we could try to do the OAuth thing, but if we did do the OAuth thing, you know, we'd have to stand up that server. And it really came down to, okay, well, we want to do this, and we want to do JWT, because JWT will allow us to interoperate a lot more easily than any other technology that was out there. And it just seemed to be the right way to go. Like I said, so time was spent to really understand how to implement the authentication piece. We couldn't find any open source authentication servers that would allow us to be able to manage the users and their roles. So that's what led to it.
Excellent.
Thanks, Tony.
Nope, you're welcome. So okay. So what I did was it's installed now, and we've got it working. You can't see it in the background till you hit the API, but I'll show you that. So the way I went about this was that the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to create a web service, but I also wanted to utilize the services framework, but I wanted to try and see if I can get some Angular, you know, some SPA stuff. So what I did was I went and I downloaded the SPA module project template for DNN down over here, and installed, you know, compiled it, set it up, compiled it, did all the usual development stuff, right, to make it work on my instance, created a page for it, and this one uses Angular to communicate back to a web service. Well, the default implementation of this module is to use the services framework in their traditional context, which means you call out the services framework, you pass the anti-forgery token, and then you have these security things that are setting up saying these are the modules that actually have access and the level that it has access to your web service. And so I said, okay, well, all right, that's a good start, right? So let's do that. Let's start with the web service that was created by the SPA module, and then let's see what we can do about having the JWT talk to it. So effectively what I've done is I've just commented out and added the DNN authorized attribute to my controller, which basically forces you to authenticate. Makes sense, right? And then I went down here to the upsert and just commented out the anti-forgery token, because there's no external client to DNN that has any idea on how to use that. So what I basically did was just turn it into a regular web service.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. You're basically at this point bypassing all of the built-in DNN tokenization, right? And well, I mean, you're not bypassing because JWT's in there, but you're kind of stripping the DNN stuff out, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right, because the beauty of the JWT and DNN8 is that that's the whole purpose. The whole purpose is to not be constrained and coupled to the DNN mechanisms for getting your information in and out of DNN. You want this thing to be able to expose services to mobile apps, to SPAs, to anything in the world, and you don't want the other party to have to know anything other than what they normally know for any other integration. And so that's the reason why this thing was stripped out. Okay, now that we have that, I said, okay, so let's go back now and let's talk about the JWT. So I don't know if you guys use Postman, but I love this app. If you're dealing with web services, this is the app, in my opinion, that you want to rely on heavily. Step away from the fiddler thing. It's just so much easier to deal with web services in every aspect using this app, and this is like a free Google app thing. So the first thing you notice is that you need to log in. This is step number one. You have to log in to DNN. And the way you do is by calling into the web service the way you normally would, except the web service is JWT auth API, mobile login. In the header, you got your content type and your accept, which is JSON. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to log in. I'm going to log into DNN. Oh, in my body, I use just raw JSON. And I pass my username and my password. I pass it into the login, I post, and I give back 200, and voila, I have a JWT. I've got a renewal token that was discussed, and then I have the actual access token. Great. Now that I've got a token, what do I do? The second step is, and they included this, and it doesn't show you that, but I kind of reverse engineered it to kind of see what methods were actually available through their provider. But there's a test get. So anytime you use a token, what you do is you take the token. Let me do this. Let me log in again. There we go. I'm going to grab this token, and in the header, under the authorization header, you use bear space and your token. You hit send, and then now you say, it says, hello host, you are authenticated through JWT. And this is in the get for the API. There's the renew JWT. Go ahead.
Quick question for you there. What is the major difference, I guess, in between, like an auth 2 with implicit, I know she's using bear. What's the main difference between JWT and that? I mean, and why?
Well, that's the whole thing, because your OAuth is actually your framework. It's your authentication framework. It's your handshakes, right? The JWT, effectively what it says is that here is a package of authentication information. So that passes into wherever you're authenticating, and on the other side, it knows how to unwrap it. Because DNN 8 is the authentication and the resource server, it knows how to unwrap its own token. But in a scenario where you've got the two disconnected systems, what you would typically have is a client ID and a client secret that would be given to the resource server so that it can unwrap your JWT.
Makes sense.
But then too, because you can have this longer standing expiration, if you're using it from other mobile devices and they completely lose connection, as long as they still have their token from before, they're already authenticated and they can connect back and get that data without any other handshakes involved, right?
100%. That is exactly right. That is on the mobile devices. What we actually do is we actually secure store the token, and that way, if they work disconnected, when they get ready to sync up again, we pass in the token. They don't have to re-authenticate.
Oh wow!
And the beauty of it is, yeah.
So they wouldn't even have to log in or anything. So,
nope.
Yep. You already know what they're.
Nope. It makes for a better user experience.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to see, okay, so we have items on this page, right? We've got 3 items on this page. Well, now we're talking DNN, right? So let's go see what our items are. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get items, and we want to make sure we've got our token. And it sends us back 3 items. item 1, 2, and 3. We have just JWT to connect to the API in DNN and bring back DNN information without the need of jumping through all this cookie context stuff that you do in DNN just to get to DNN data. So if I want to see, I'm sorry?
That rocks. That's really good.
Yeah.
Hey, can you very quickly, can you tell us how to get Postman? Because this tool looks really valuable.
You just go out to Google and you go out to the Google, what is it? Google Apps. Google Apps. Actually, you just type in Postman. Postman, Google app. Post name, not post name, Postman. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. And you just download it and it'll put in your Google Apps, which I dropped mine over here to the Google Apps. And I can launch it. And this is the other thing about the Postman. As you see, I've got like a little collections over here on the left-hand side that allows me to store these particular requests. So I can always go back and run them again. And it's got other things you can do with it too. But so the next thing we want to do is we want to get an item, and so there's 3 items. I think one was named item 3. We come down here again, and we see item number 3. Now, we also, if we want to create an item, we come over here, we call it item 4. We put in our header, and it gives us back the number 4, which is what is returned from the web service. If we go to the web page, we've got item 4. If we update from our SPA, and we call it item 4B, we hit save. It says item 4B here. If we go back to Postman and we get our item, we say item 4B. That's how it works. Update works the exact same way. You pass in the ID, you pass it in, and I mean, so here's the thing, right? Just so you don't believe this is smoke and mirrors, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to like screw up this token in a crazy kind of way. That's what you see. 401 unauthorized error. Now, the other thing too, just so that you get a little bit more familiar with the JWT or more comfortable with it, if you can go to jwt.io, they actually have a debugger, and you can put in any web token into the debugger. I think I still have it in my clipboard. Pass it in, and it's got the SID. It says, what is the resource, which is the DNN8, and it says that I'm actually a member of the administrators, registered users, and subscribers role.
Giving out any of the data, just the structure.
Yeah, well, there's data. The data is the SID.
Right, but
yeah, the data is the SID. I'm sorry?
It's giving us some of the structure of this, but it's not imparting it's not because this isn't hashed or something that you're getting the data out of this. This is just the structure of some of the information about, you know, the DNN8 being the source and the resource and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, this is the what's it called? The ISS is the I want to say it's the
issuer.
Yeah, issuer. There you go. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's the issuer of the token, and because like I said, because DNN8 knows how its tokens are created, it knows what the SID means, and it takes the SID and turns it back into a user. But as I said, it's not. There's no secret to it. So that's one of the. So you see your invalid signature is because it doesn't have the secret in here. I mean, they may have the secret or whatever, I don't know, but from what I could tell, this is what's actually in the payload. So, and there's different algorithms, but this one's typically the 256 is the default. But you can put in your token in here and actually have it, have it decoded, and if you have a secret, you can put the secret in it. It tells you the secret is valid or what have you. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I can cover at this point. We've got the messages, refresh token if we want to renew a token. Let's see, what was our login? And this is the thing I don't really understand about the DNN8 refresh token. Like when I hit their extend token call, it requires you to be authenticated, but refresh tokens are not, they don't work that way. You know what I mean? You shouldn't have to have a bearer for a refresh token. You should just have to have the token. And so as I said, that's some of the subtle differences, some of the subtle nuances. And that tells me I'm unauthorized. Probably because I invalidated it. Yeah, then it comes back with another token. But I just found it really weird that you had to put in a bearer for a refresh token. But again, I think it's their implementation because they're holding both ends of that pipe. And again, the only thing I'm doing over here is regular web service stuff that was just created by default on module. Nothing different, except in the one that's created by the SPA module, it actually gets the DNN context from the default way that it works. So I actually changed the, what was it, the JavaScript. Was it the item view, item edit? Yeah. Where did I change that at? User, post. Yeah.
What, man, you're not using the Angular for this?
The
Come
headers.
on.
I think it might have been in the header or something like that. I don't know exactly where it was, but I pulled out some of the stuff, and I mean that's it. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I mean, if you guys have questions, I'm totally open to answering any questions that you guys might have. When I get to DNN Con, it's going to be a deeper workshop that's going to have a lot more complex examples of the web service and the Angular interface and tables and stuff like that. And then also I'll have the code out on GitHub or wherever DNN Con posts the presentations and any code that might accompany the presentations, for the purpose of this, for the workshops.
I had a question about the token, that if we have this refresh token or renewal token that is going to be something that can go back and get additional updates if something has changed. Is there a way to kill that initial token if it's got an expiration to last for a day or 6 years in your example? Are you able to kill that, or is that something that actually doesn't even need to be done? And I'm just thinking about the fact that it might have been set to not expire forever or 2 weeks. Are you able to kill it from the other direction, or does that even matter?
Inside of DNN8, I cannot answer that question. I don't know how they're managing the token, the access token itself, at a high level. But usually with JWT, there is a way to invalidate a token, because what happens is that you invalidate the refresh token, you invalidate the main token.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So, because when you invalidate the main token and you go to get a refresh token, it automatically says that token is no longer valid because it uses the main token to create the refresh token. Because if you look at the refresh token, it's a smaller size. It's not a full token. So it uses the main token in order to capture information that's actually created in the refresh token every time.
David, did we have any questions from the online crew? I haven't quite seen that on the screen, but.
Yeah, if anybody online has any question, please be sure to post it into the chat window, and we'll be happy to do it, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask it. Tony, I'm really excited about this post, man. I've never even heard of that. This looks a very nice tool here to quickly stub some things out to make sure your sanity is good.
Even if you're talking about standard web services and you're communicating, it looks like it's a solid tool for that in general as well.
It really is. It's actually helped me find errors in code, because on the mobile side of things, and even on the client, the JavaScript side of things, what you find is that when you're putting together these requests, sometimes you think that you're putting the request together the right way, and the next thing you know, it's not working out so well. Like, for example, one of the things that we were working through a while ago was inside of the request, if I want to send, like here I have my headers or in my body, and I want to send form encoded, right? So form and URL encoded data back to the server. It's like this thing was perfect in making sure that we had the correct format without going back to the code and having every single time to do this like trial and error thing to say, oh, okay, oh no, it's got the wrong name, or oh no, the value is not right, and especially when it comes to posting files, because it was a multi-content scenario. And this thing handled it like in an incredible kind of way, and so it really cut down our development time substantially, just to be able to hit a button and hit send.
That's great.
If we don't have any other questions,
we do have a question online.
I got some here.
Yeah, we got one here online from Daryl Tunnel. The question is, can you authorize to a set of roles only, like a particular method? Does that make sense, Tony?
Yes. Yeah. If I come down into it, and remember the DNN API, and I assume we're talking about DNN API, right? So the DNN API is still just a regular web API. So what happens is that if I sit down here and I say I want specific roles under my authorize, I could put, well, they put it over here, but I can put like admin under my API. So now only the user or the JWT that contains that admin role is going to get through this particular web service call.
Are there any data limitations with JWT, either in size of package data or complexity of it? Or are there restrictions that you've run into or seen with it?
No, I mean, the JWT is a JWT, right? So it's still happening over a post or a GET or whatever it might be. So whatever your request limit is on your web server or in your web config or in your IIS configuration, I mean, that's the only limitation that I see. And then as far as the complexity, it's actually very flexible, because if inside of JWT, again, not necessarily so much in DNN8, but just in JWT, it's claims based. So you can create a specific type and say that type is user country, or user car, or whatever you want to call it, and then you can actually assign that claim to that particular user, and that gets passed along with the JWT. So then it comes back and says, okay, as I go through and I look through the JWT and I look through the token, I'm like, okay, what are the claims, the identity? So like, for example, inside of this, in this controller, I can come in here and say, let's see, identity, no. Hold on. I think it's Windows. I'm trying to remember what's the specific object. Wait a second, this is a private variable. No, it's not there. But I'm looking for the identity, and it just may not be, the namespace may not be included in here. Dynamic security, system security. Yeah, it would be under system security. But there's the identity, and under identity, there's the claims. So let's see. How come I cannot find the frickin' identity? Anyway, I'd have to find it for you, but effectively, yeah, it didn't even pull that in at all. But effectively, you pull in the identity, right? Like the authentication identity, and then once you have that identity, there's I want to say it's a collection of claims. So there's a list that's attached to that identity called claims, and then in that claims you can actually get what you want based on, it's like a name value pair. So you say, oh, okay, so the claim type is car, the claim type is city, the claim type is whatever you want it to be, and you get it back, and then you get back that value out of it. So it can handle some pretty complex stuff, because it can actually serialize different types of objects.
Very cool. So give us a quick rundown of a real life scenario that you may would use this for, and yeah, and why this would be good to do that.
Real life scenario is I have to authenticate, and I mean, so we're talking JWT in general, or are we talking DNN8?
Yes to both.
Okay. So on the DNN8 side of things, I don't want to use Facebook to authenticate. I don't want to use any of the standard authentication mechanisms external to DNN8. So I want to use DNN8 as my authentication server, and I want to expose, so I want to be able to create users in DNN8. I want to be able to have my data in DNN8 communicate with another system, call it Salesforce.com. So I want to integrate with Salesforce.com. So I'm the authentication system of record with DNN8, and I want my users to be able to pull information from my DNN8 instance into Salesforce.com. And it's going from Salesforce.com to me. So effectively what I do is I say, okay, here's the login. Salesforce.com logs into DNN8. It gets the token back and uses that token in order to capture information that needs to get stored in Salesforce.com. That's one scenario. Another scenario is that I have a client that doesn't have an authentication server. He has DNN8, and he wants to make sure that he has specific services that are exposed by DNN8, and we want to use those users, right? That's the same scenario. It basically with this one, those would be real life scenarios. If I have a app, and it's a pretty sophisticated web app that I've created for a customer. It's got a dashboard. It's got all this information. And my customer says to me, we need it to work on mobile. We need to pull your data into our website, right? So with this particular mechanism, you can actually give them that in a very standards-based way.
Very nice. Any other questions online or in the room? So Tony, for some of these existing commercial module developers or even open source module developers in the DNN community that have built these systems that basically is it's holding a lot of data specific to a certain feature set. Like, for instance, let's just pull out Will Stroll's Code Camp module that he has made. If he wants to expose that data, he already has his endpoints written. It's in SPA, so he has his endpoints written in Web Services Framework, and he wants to now supply Code Camp information to a mobile application, then this would be a wonderful way for him to do that. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think the biggest benefit of it all is that when you talk about you have external users and not every user has the same access to the same information. They're different users, if it's customers, they're different customers, and their data is segmented, by their user ID, which could be segmented by their company, which could be segmented by their roles, and you've got this pretty complex structure. Well, before, when you had to deal with that at DNN, you had to go about it in a completely different way. If you wanted to expose your data through DNN services, you kind of do it through rows, but it kind of had to be module based, and then it had to get the context, and once you got the context, it had to figure out what you had access to and all this other stuff. Well, quite honestly, I mean, it's very easy with this one to say, okay, well, I want these web services, they're going to have these roles, and you can even go any further and say, okay, this particular claims, which could be a company, has access to XYZ information, right? And you can build your query off of that. So really, it just gives you a lot more flexibility in actually doing it this way, and pretty much every other system understands JWT.
So Tony, would you see a reason why, and I'm going to throw a crazy example out. So we have all this built-in DNN based stuff for the web services framework, right? The things that you've got commented out there, and even some more possibilities. I think I know what you're going to say for the answer, but is that still viable if you're building let's say a custom module, a SPA-based module or an MVC module? Is it still valid just to use that, or would you ever have a situation where you're building integration between two different modules and you want to use JWT?
No.
Why
would you
you would still use the same thing then, right? So
yeah, you'd use the same thing because you'd use the same thing because the services framework, the way that it is right now, actually allows you to get context around your modules. And once you have context around your modules, then you've got access to everything else that comes along with it. And quite honestly, if it's a self-contained system, so all of my modules are on my DNN site, then there really is no reason to kind of, to go out to come back, essentially, right? If I'm in my network, there's no reason for me to go out to the internet to come back to my network to a computer. And that's the same premise, right? So you built a module, the module has some views, your views, whether they're Angular related or they're not, or web form or whatever, it's like it's still contained within your module and your DNN instance for the most part. Really, where this lends itself is outside of that, outside of where I want to create a platform. If I wanted to just create a platform and not have one single web page, but yet I want to create a platform and I want to build it on DNN, well, I can do all the DNN stuff I know how to do, but then I can expose everything as services this way.
Yeah, it's great. So you could find yourself in a situation, let's say you're building a mobile app, but you want to use DNN as your database, essentially, for that. Then you may find yourself just writing web services on the DNN side and then using JWT from the mobile app to access or authenticate and get to that data. Right?
Tony, if
Yeah.
Inject in a kind of an extension on that example, we have a client from a couple years back where we did this through standard web services, but the point's the same, and it would have been far simpler here with JWT with some benefits of how those tokens live and authenticate only once, in that we put together a lot of data for patient-related information in a DNN website instance. The core use of that was intended to be within DNN for reporting and for the usage and update of that information. However, there were people walking around with cell phones and tablets that needed to just get data. They needed to authenticate, they needed to keep it secure, but those cell phones would lose connections all the time, and they didn't need to keep logging back in to come get that stuff. And when we were in charge of the one side, a completely different team was dealing with and developing the mobile website, mobile app. And that mobile app needed to communicate to the DNN data, read only, but not have to authenticate all the time with every single handshake and every single back and forth of data. And then there was a third location of data that was completely separate, and it was a WordPress-based extension of data. So in that kind of scenario, you could have DNN be the authentication source, be the source of data and the data authority point, but then several different things all connecting with, authenticating through, and getting data out of JWT in an efficient manner.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, we found about 3 years ago that what we were doing was effectively using DNN as our authentication server and data repository, because everything we built was a web service, and we ended up building everything as a service using the services framework inside of DNN, and we found that DNN was just one client to that service. So every time we were creating our views, we were actually using jQuery, and we were going back in because we didn't want to do web forms. It's like the world had moved away from web forms, and we started using more client-side technologies. We found that as we did that, we had to create services anyway, and we found that it was more efficient. We found that it was more robust. We found that it really made sense from an architectural standpoint, and especially when you're talking about how pervasive the model view controller pattern has become in just all development. And so at the end of the day, we were just creating one client, and then we had other clients that had different technologies that they wanted information out of DNN, right? But the thing with they loved the whole user role thing of DNN. They loved that idea. They loved the way it was implemented. The Department of Justice has implemented it because they feel it's secure. They feel it integrates with their Active Directory and all this other crazy stuff, right? And so people like that aspect of it. They feel it's very secure because it's not closed source. It's not open source. It's closed source when it comes to authentication. So it can integrate with these different closed source systems. But they still want, like you said, they want the information here. They want it on a tablet. We've had to write Windows apps to talk to DNN. You know, we've had to have the mobile apps talk to DNN. We've had to have other websites talk to DNN using the client-side technology, and it was really, it wasn't really hard, but it was like, why, right? Why can't we just do this the way that I would do this in another technology?
That's a good point. So I'm assuming you're happy that this support is now available in DNN.
Yeah. Yeah, because as you know, you get a lot of clients that come to you and they say, I want a website, and what's that website? And they hand you this requirements document that's like, no, this isn't a website, this is an application. It's hosted on a web server, but it's an application. And the minute that you realize that the scope is gone there, it becomes a lot more difficult to try to architect it in a way where, number one, you can grow it in the future without jumping through a lot of hoops, and you don't have to. The framework isn't what's the word? It's a hindrance. It's not a hindrance to developing a full-blown web app on the DNN platform.
So not to totally put you on the spot, but to sort of put you on the spot. You've done a great job here of really kind of figuring this out before. I mean, to my knowledge, nobody's really talking about this much yet in the DNN community. So first of all, kudos to you and hats off to you for kind of reverse engineering some of this stuff to figure out what was possible, what's not possible. Second of all, can we expect to see anything from you beyond just your sessions on helping people understand this a little bit in the form of any kind of documentation or any type of, hint the May session that we're doing? Maybe there's some information that needs to go into the documentation center. Can we expect anything coming out of you or Carter Solutions on this?
You mean from the documentation stuff you guys were talking about earlier?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one example. I mean, some people like to blog, some people like to put a video out there of this stuff. I'm just wondering if we would be able to expect something that's easily accessible on the web or anything like that for others to be able to learn more about this. Of course, we will.
Yeah, well, what I'm going to do is, at DNN Con, I'm going to dig deeper into more real world applications for this stuff, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all that stuff together and actually put it out there and probably GitHub or something like that, and then that way you'll be able to download a project that has the pieces already in place, and then run your database script, maybe run some migrations or something so you can run on your SQL instance, and then really just be able to just walk through the code and how it actually works. I mean, because that's the easiest way most people learn stuff, and this easiest way to kind of retain information is hands-on.
Excellent. So to kind of organize things here for the end of the meeting, we're reaching about 8:20, so we're getting close to the end of our session. Tony's given us a lot to think about here, and we've gone through questions, and we're kind of segueing there is talking about looking forward to Tony's sessions at DNN Con. So kind of as a wrap-up of Tony's session here at SoFri, but as a teaser for what we're looking forward to for DNN Con, let's just take a minute and get some teasers for sessions that we know are coming up, because we have at least 3 of us here in the room that are giving sessions. Tony, you've mentioned that you're doing your deep dive into JWT as one of the sessions, and the second session was then going to be, I'm sorry, I lose track. How are the 2 different sessions going to piggyback off each other, and if somebody has to just catch one, they need to catch the first one, or can the second one stand alone? Give us a little bit of a teaser for your DNN Con sessions.
Sure. So the JWT is really a deeper dive into what we've just gone over today. It's more complex examples. It's really how are we putting this stuff together and how this thing actually works under the hood. So that's really just the first piece, right? The other piece is building mobile apps using Xamarin Studio to actually talk to your services framework using JWT. So you're actually going to see an actual cross-platform Android and iOS app developed that talks to a web service using JWT.
Excellent. So those are 3 sessions, really, and that's going to make it hard for anybody else who's putting up sessions against those, because that's going to be a triple play that people are going to want to see one right after the other.
I hope so. I hope so.
All right, so that's part 1, part 2, and then mobile as 3 sessions there. You're not doing Ignite, are you also?
No, I'm not.
All right. David, you're in front of the camera there. Let's get a little intro into your session.
Yes, I'll be doing 2 sessions at DNN Con, and they're not listed properly on the website right now. One of them is, and the other one is not. The first one that I'll be doing is correct, but you don't see an abstract there, but it is basically pushing the envelope of DNN, and we're going to take a journey through some really interesting use cases for DNN that they're a little bit outside of the box, and there's a lot of them out in the community, so I've been collecting different ideas from different companies and different people that have done some really interesting things with DNN that you just might be surprised at. So that'll be a really good session to maybe spark an interest in doing something, a little outside of the box. The other session will be, it'll basically be a combination of utilizing MB QuickSight and DNN Packager from Daryl Tunnel that's in here, and very quickly setting up a local development environment once you have all the prerequisites. So I will go through some of the prerequisites, but mostly it's going to be focusing on the use of MB QuickSight and DNN Packager to set up your development environment and get started. And we will go all the way to the point of setting up a very simple module.
To speak into that or give another plug for that session there, if some of the training sessions that happen the first day of DNN Con are really for administrators and really for skinning and then some other things like that, this is going to be a session in which you can come wanting to have gotten into development or being interested in seeing how other people develop and how to get a good stable location to work in, and you could leave with bullet point instructions from David on how to do that and set it up, and I'm sure if you're following along with your laptop in that session, by the end of the session you'll be ready to go. So it's a good thing for intro to developers.
When we're first starting out, we run into all kinds of hurdles that we just don't expect, permissions probably being the biggest one, right? Setting up your environment. So, with these tools, it'll have you up and running in a jiffy.
All right. The session that I'll be giving is kind of an extension on some other sessions I've done before. I'll bring in some bullet points from some things about working with Cloudflare and CloudFront for CDN caching and speeding. Some settings things about setting up your web config and your DNN instance. Nothing at all similar to the powerhouse of information that Mitch Sellers always brings to that same topic. However, there's going to be a focus on Google PageSpeed Insight. Google PageSpeed Insight is something that for us as DNN integrators, specifically working often underneath of ad agencies and marketing companies who are looking at those numbers that come out of the PageSpeed Insights and considering them as dogma or pounding their fist on the table saying, why is this number so low? It has to be higher. And us, from a development standpoint, not really caring what those numbers are whatsoever, but recognizing that Google values those. And Google that'll impact your ranking, that'll impact several other things, but at the end of the day, it also is a measure of how fast and how efficient that site is running. And so having had to address that reluctantly, I'll walk through an explanation of Google PageSpeed Insight, how it affects sites, take a look at DNN out of the box and how it ranks, and then walk you through several different steps that are both in DNN settings, in web config settings, and IIS settings, and show you how those can impact Google PageSpeed Insight scores to increase those. And if you're coming in with low scores, some of these tips will get you 5 and 10 points, and sometimes 5 and 10 points are hard to get. The more points you get higher, the harder it is to get more. You know, you might come in with a 60 and you can leave with a 75, and that's a pretty good improvement in a set of shots just from some settings.
So let's not forget too, Clint Patterson will be our very own here. He is not with us tonight, unfortunately, traveling.
He's going to a grueling location, right?
Yeah, tough life that he has there. But he not only will be presenting a session at DNN Con, for many of you, I believe it was November maybe, that he presented at Southern Fried here his IoT project.
Correct.
And quite interesting. And by the way, I'll be kind of touching on that use case a little bit as one of those little educations.
Yeah.
So Clint will be presenting again on IoT. It'll be a little bit more refined probably at that point because he's gotten a lot further along in that project. But if you want to see a turkey controlled by DNN, you got to check out that session. But we'll also say that Clint has been invited to be the keynote speaker this year at DNN Con. So if you've never heard Clint really speak, you're in for a real treat. So be sure to go for that. So.
We got anybody else online that's presenting? I think we got everybody covered. All right. Yeah, absolutely. You know, just a few shout outs. Mitch Sellers is always informative, and he gave at the last DNN Con, you know, a version of this, you know, performance and setup. He gives a lot of use cases with specific tools for diagnostics that are a can't miss kind of session.
He does have a new spin on it.
Yes.
In this session, so it's going to be really nice for this one.
Yep, I agree. We have Gifford Watkins, always a community favorite, MVP, to really come in and speak his business model. And it is preaching to the choir here sometimes, but that is the point. It is really energetic and exciting to hear his business case scenario about how to use DNN to create and structure your web business. And he has a great model, and it's working for him. And I know some others who've tried the same thing, and they're striving towards that all the time. So we've had it at the original SoFri. We've had him again then do a session recently that we recorded and put online. This is a good one to catch if you haven't got it before.
And if you want a wonderful road trip to Baltimore, we heard through the grapevine that GIF is going to be driving up to our area and hopefully riding with somebody from here. So if you want an incredibly entertaining road trip full of all kinds of diversity, you know, be sure to join us here in Charlotte and ride up together.
I mean, I'm sure those of us who are all online and hanging out here now tonight, we've all met and know Gifford conversationally, even for a few minutes in DNN Cons. He's one of the most entertaining guys to sit down and spend some time with for just a couple of drinks and a couple of conversations. If you catch an hour of conversation, it's a roller coaster of fun things. So a road trip sounds great with Gifford. And yeah, I mean, there are obviously tons of people who are going to be fantastic. We got Anderson Oliveria putting out.
You got to say Anderson.
I'm sorry, I say it wrong. We have horror stories. That's going to be an exciting, fun one. We all have client horror stories, and so he's got support horror stories. That one caught my eye. We have Oliver Hine is doing his own spin on performance as well. That one would be a great one to go and participate in as well. You know, we've got Will, we've got Lee, we've got all kinds of favorites in here. So I don't mean to leave anyone out as though less important than anything, but it's going to be a great DNN Con to participate in and to hear these sessions, and then to also spend time with all of these folks afterwards. All right, I think we hit right at 8:30. Unless there's anything else from the online crew, I'm going to go ahead and say that we're wrapping up here our March episode or meeting of Southern Fried DNN User Group. Thanks for everybody for participating online. Tony, thanks very much for spending time with us and really introducing us.
No, thank you guys, man. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
We're gonna put up the video for this here later tonight. I'll post a recap on Southern Fried DNN, and we'll update it again after DNN Con with some more links and some of the materials that you have from your sessions then. Everybody, thank you very much for spending time with us tonight. We will see you at DNN Con, and then when we have our next meeting, which is April the 21st, we will give a recap of DNN Con at that meeting. And thanks very much, everybody, for participating. See you in just about 20 days.
We'll also have Nick Caliani speaking with us at that meetup, so it would be one that you don't want to miss.
Absolutely.
Take care and have a wonderful evening, everyone.